I can think of one death, okay? One.
Leah, I'm good.
Okay, Zion, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. Content warning, there's discussions of mentions of sexual violence against Black women and some discussions of anti-Blackness. Is this okay with everyone? Are there any objections? Cool. A Black girl screams. Does anyone hear? A Black girl appears. Does anyone cry? Does anyone listen? Venus exists, but it's invisible. Do you pay attention to Venus? Hell, do you even know she exists? When she creeps across the plantation, hand muffling her cries, tears running down her cheeks, escaping from the master's bedroom. Do you see her with skin that shines so effortlessly, melon glowing in the moonlight? She stands quietly, pushed to the lowest bar of the communicative register. She tries to talk. She pleads. She begs, but you keep ignoring her. Her name is Venus, but it could be Shakara, the 16-year-old Black female assaulted by a white SRO. Shakara's teacher refused to put away her phone, and Dr. Long called a SRO who placed her arm around Shakara's neck and flipped Shakara's chair over, dragged her, and handcuffed her. It could also be Letitia. It could be Harriet, it could be Heaven. We don't know. We will never know. She could have been a mother, a musician, an artist, but it doesn't matter anyway. She was a Black girl, disgusting, filthy, a spectacle, flesh, just property. She appears in the archive of slavery as a dead girl, named an illegal indictment against a slave ship captain tried for the murder of 2 Negro girls. A story predicated upon impossibility. Listening to the unsaid, a small speck in the vast of history. There's not one extant autobiographical narrative of a female captain that survived the Middle Passage, and yet the story of a slave woman persists. Her name is Venus. She's found everywhere. This is her 1AC. I am Venus, and this is her story. If I am Venus debate is no different from the battlefield, no different from the plantation, Black bodies are marked as captive and criminal all the same. Venus is killed the same way, Shakara is arrested the same way. Black women in debate are too ratchet and need to be less loud to win ballots. Debate like the world beyond a sight where Black death exceeds Black body and murders the spirit, Black spirit. That's Heinz in Woman 18. Woman defies spirit, murders, offensive assault, that proven by without source or continued violent Black Black creating society sensitized racism. We cannot stop saying their names. Santa and Jillian Joseph, 7-year-old Black girl that was killed by a police raid, and most women shot 137 times. Their parents may continue to destroy Black women and Black boys, but they're witnessing cyclical atrocity of white spectatorship as well as murdering Black girls between the ages of 5 and 14. Seems less and more don't like criminalized by having too much attitude, school discipline, these things for the spirit, murdering and death. Black spirit can result in imprisonment of the mind and soul. Black girls survive dating encounters, educate, maybe confined to classroom-based jail cells that are designed to severe murder, Black girl freedom, Black girl matches, and Black girl joy, and militarized technologies and AI begin and end with the spirit of Black women. You think this is a metaphor, but it isn't. It literally kills Black women, destroys families and communities. All we can do is cope, but the second we speak up about it, the cops show up. They may not wear blue and shoot at us, but they kill us all the same. The consequences of these action research is not just fairness. Our lives are on the line, Hampton. 21. Consequences of AI censor literally the lives of Black and Brown people with discussion of fairness. Overseas military AI weapons, use of murder or right celebration of the pay gap and seeking to come with her. Women of color will die healthcare loans and resources to Black and Brown mothers. Their daughters are sexually fetishized after sexual violence at the hands of Black women in the fabric of life stitched with violence and violence we use in the daily issues for living. They take account of physical, mental health, and never qualities built to white supremacist capitalist system of patriarchy that it fueled, in which Black folks innovatively created these biased projects of affluent, cyber-sexual white women that create AI technologies for weaponizing and fueling misgenders Black women, vis-a-vis white supremacy, invisibility, algorithm, and healthcare management that systematically denies benefits of Black nations and automated pressure on algorithms that design the resources for predictive analysis of the U.S. welfare system. And if I am Venus, then I make the world through my labor, and my labor to make the world makes me hurt and succeed. The slaves of women are best efficient as plantations, the belly of the underbelly, the sexual reproduction defined by Black women's labor, defined the afterlife of slavery, the moment of slaves are Black workers, the worker obscures the message reveals what sexual labor is critical by those inside the heroic of the Black worker in general, strike and abolition ideals, embrace her labels for marriage protection. The only way to redress her wrongs is prove it impossible to assimilate Black women religion of radicalism that is critical to commission the capital of slave women finds plantation and boys and slave workers stream to destroying the master with praises best side. This is where the stretched and broken worker stereotype comes from the labor central to gendered afterlife of slavery and capitalism during the slave war. African women are allowed to surmise and intimacy of Carter or attended their cultural made of formation and thus provides the pyramid narrative rather than gender produced by the violence of slavery. Yet it brings up new motivation. We gave you life, we gave you birth, we gave you God, we gave you earth. Does Venus' story end here? Does Shakara's story end on the ground handcuffed by a white man? If these stories had a different ending, a world where Venus lived free, where Shakara was never assaulted by a white cop. Catherine McCormick reminds us that the free non-free person is embedded at work within. The verb says in the noun she, an unfree non-person, that she is born free. She is not free. She says she is free. What if the archive of Blackness told a different story? What if we just listened to Black women for once? Hampton 21. A Black woman is less returns context that centers dominant lenses in which we understand the algorithm manifestations of feminism that values ways to understand the worldview, the colors of white supremacist hegemony. Black women are facing our freedom when study destruction of all systems of repression, and white men are not daughters who face racist sex of violence. So they have to think about the being fetishized in the search engine, and social technology is not embedded with depression, but perpetuated from the master's son, dismantled from the master's house. What are you doing? All your tools to fill for the science of profit. And Black women have already made a new ending to the story. Vote affirmative to join Black women in creating a living room. It's the only way there's a forever world that's been given to you that helps you make a new one in its place. Gum 17. When police violence and harmful cause the community exploded in Georgia, look at the depths of systematic a neighborhood unsafe for Black children. Do architecture plan for the sunrise of Harlem. Harlem's Black people face the connection of welfare queen platform that Black women turn to spiritual practice and nurse activism. Black feminists like to use the living room alternates for years and started nuclear war practice or living room and fitness practice full of the world and National Domestic Workers Alliance. Make sure the weapons so leaders of people calling during miraculously serving land. People working to make spaces safe for child inclusive so people don't have to choose between their home and the streets near Detroit and New Orleans and making living rooms to bring a new world. Local communities of living to sustainable gathering of living space in a house at a time. It's time to make our way home. And you should refuse to make this debate another side of spirit murdering another dead Black black girl. The role of the balance and judge is extend her whiteness and let me do my black girl magic. Kinds of woman 18. The daily campus of anti-black aggression resulting youth by spirit murdering and psychological trauma giving the schools are side of spirit murdering, hill seeking, can happen as they take place with what's necessary to match and economic system. Educators are sentencing black girls to spiritual deaths in the classroom, spirit murdering through practice and purpose are related to white hegemonic practice. We cannot address this issue. Educators are constantly seeing anti-black racism as benign and legitimate. Educators actively alter their pedagogical practice so we descend our whiteness as part of our spiritual healing. We have to intentionally repress the spirit injuries and anti-black warfare that is essential since schools are never tend to adequately serve them in the first place. Centering whiteness requires education means engaging in reparative acts of resistance to white person structures for foster spirit healing. Schools must eradicate disciplinary policies. This we have for immense for a feeling that center the revolution power of the radical imagination and black girlhood. I'm good for 6.
All right. Okay. As a black male, how should I engage or participate in the affirmative? Am I
So
supposed to participate in
the
the
first thing to
affirmative?
do is create like an alternating view for like black women to sustain themselves. The second thing you can do is disagree with the fundamental thesis of our app, obviously. But the third thing you can do, wait, hold on. What was the second half of that question?
Are black men supposed to be in the affirmative in the living room?
So one is that I think that question is slightly problematic since the entirety of what I see focuses on the specific violence that black women experience. So we would say that.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking you, what is the response I'm supposed to do? If that's problematic, I guess black men aren't
I
supposed
mean,
to be in the
aligning
living room.
yourself with black.
Wait, oh, okay. No, you go ahead. I was just realizing something.
Okay, aligning yourselves with black resistance movements that are forwarded by black women and supporting the idea that they should create living rooms for each other is something that we would say is good, since black men also experience forms of things like misogyny against black women, which means that they obviously also perpetuate some of the like things that the 1EC talks about.
Okay, sure. I guess can the positionality that you discussed in the Hartman evidence of black women get better within the world?
Yeah, so we say actually that social organizing has materially made the positionality of black women better. For example, a lot of the heart of social organizing, for example, even like a perfect example is the current example of like Black Lives Matter movement being started by like 3 black women, or examples of how black women actively try to fix their social positioning within the world and also attempt to create these like new forms of living that help sustain themselves. So we're not making like a pessimistic claim, if that's your question, that like black women can never change. But their Hartman evidence does give a really good analysis that the afterlife of slavery has led to black women experiencing not only anti-blackness, but also things like sexual violence that's like continued through their reproductive layer that's never acknowledged, right? So that's the argument.
That's fine. Does the act get performative offense?
We say that the act gets performative offense through the like blurbs about how like
Okay,
at the top of the 1EC.
that's fine. Is there do you get offense? I guess yeah, so do you get offense absent the banning of lethal autonomous weapons?
We don't ban lethal autonomous weapons to like state action, if that's what you're getting at.
Okay, so what you concede you violate framework?
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, so I guess let's talk about the methodology in the living room. There's non-black judges, non-black people in the Zoom on the stream. They could be the feds, they could be the police. What is giving them the I guess legibility of this
Well, I
method?
think that's kind of like already not necessarily true because obviously non-black judges can still
Can
recognize.
you really tell me that one of these random people in the Zoom aren't like some cop? Like we really don't know that. I'm not even trolling.
Again, that doesn't deny the fact that they are educators within a space that forwards
Okay, sure.
education. So if they have a
Sure.
like,
So what is the benefit in making your method legible to non-black people who have like
well,
carried out forms
obviously,
of
like
anti-blackness?
we weren't able to like pick who we were able, like who would judge us, right? The argument is that even in the face of whoever judges us, there's always spirit murdering that happens within the debate, and
Well, I
educators,
guess
i.e., people like the judges,
is there a
should be
benefit in
able to
making
put their foot down and prevent that psychic murder
I
for another
just
black girl.
is there a benefit in making your method legible to non-blacks?
Sorry. Re-ask that question.
I'll start prep. Is there a benefit to making your method legible to non-black people?
I don't necessarily think that that's our argument. Our argument is that just that they are
Alright.
educators and they should recognize when a black woman's psyche is like injured.
Okay, 423 left. I'll make sure the doc gets sent, then I'll give an order. Okay. Order now is two then case. On case, it'll be I guess an overview, then the framing, and then from there I'll signpost.
How many off did you say, Zion?
Two.
I didn't get the doc yet. Sorry. Just waiting for it to refresh.
Has anyone got it, or is there like a problem with the sending?
I just got it. I'm downloading it.
I just
now.
got the email, but I'm downloading it too. Yeah.
All right.
I've got it all up, so I'm ready whenever.
I'm good.
Okay. Leah, Randall.
Yeah, I just got it. I'm good.
Okay. First off, interpretation would have been the black this only the Russell statement should determine the difference between affirmative and negative, clarify any ability to garner. Opposite set of Russell statements of violation, ban means affirmative official campers. Dictionary to forbid officially. Now, that lethal tongue swabs over with middle intervention evidence. 20 lost swabs that selected technical gauge targets with little to no human intervention. A violation, CX1 standards are productive. Asking more solve without action, but theoretically on the pressure without trying to solve for material conditions. They are faced rejecting the cabin doesn't mean anything at all. It doesn't close with those places. So why to cause underrepresentation for people? A color policy which turns case next is limits Africans choose literally anything they want to just for the variation of no I'm also for negative against this and because it's structural barriers back to this place. That's negative responsible for this closing with the prerequisite engaging in your method of church case next is prior to the round. Leah knew what the content of her half was swifting affirmative which shows the position Tracy did negate the social L blacks in the context of their literature term impact is if there was not black people on how culpable for blacks as a result, mostly found ways to endless deliberating upon TV app for the specific laws are gone opposite of loan solves because it allows us to understand how to apply contextualized methods to the road. No one method is but defending of the government rather allowing things to have certain benefits of strive and their policy system. I've been black topical to basic education good for black people. At one point, predictable ground in classroom. Key divide whether the method is effort to give black people 2.0 ability to defend position against knowledge opponents. Key to support black politics. Held back communities, otherwise radical politics, intellectual aspiration, design limit black disruption. Things between class church case next is failure for our stations. Point kills class because in many cases we can't test the truth of the affirmative claims, so they'll get across up to all absent testing gets weight case fairness black policy stability. Can solve the opposite actually their methods and arguments we read have no effect on subjectivity, but judge can determine the effect of the direction of good norms or equitable practice. So our type of good means to get to fairness logical church returning the in the blacks. You are fair that means you have procedural day and the black person created this fairness in the winner of terror fairness. Next contextual of white fairness, but not black fairness and all patterns read off our just ways about the blacks edition. Our blacks is about methods of being for niggas to form community resistance T in that case. So that case to that case was starting to go for black people and they're winning us because I wasn't able to gauge out the arguments this year considers the legitimacy that I want to see. Second off, the half-life for slavery structure the worlds we know are positioning blacks as terror criminal, which that's a way she was already here. Structure team and slavery resistance political because black lives are shown in paradise divide where race calculus half-life for slavery skill life change and limited access health education district incarceration poverty living wake of slavery living at the half-life which have last shown inheritance not being a mother inheritance everywhere apparent ongoing criminalization of black women and children living away community disasters effects on the content gratuitous also black people can weaponize side what's black and the way to be in is to weaponize the way that we are conscious to the vulnerability force and attempts by self-affirmation possibly with the reforms it's not a strategy for the slave moral 13 slave objections slowly to even perform their own bypasser by the master by into black world the performance of blacks and serve from the force this open flesh slave until lesser subject blacks in such a way that blacks and black performance belong to master without possibility blacks are objects and these objects are inherently performing how does agency have the music gatherings are produced by slaves there the most german was counted the master told the first ejection only there were for one depression that master selling away that's the way that agencies heroes criminalized on every level that these acts are in slavery or terror any after individualized overcoming sexual racism refigures black resilience liberal That maintains widespread flexibility of black female body claim. That BR in the normalization, evaluation, and evolution, and overcoming which is because black every normalizes by focus system restriction over system with endurance heavy and austerity valorization of individual black systemic structures and normalizing exercise the human capital overcoming anti-black sexual or pressure part of the new black politics and inequality for irreversible therefore learning of any efforts toward dispelling it beyond the normalizing equality with their various mechanisms resistance to sexual for other periphery centralizing inequity attachment for perpetual violence against black people resistance to the suffering opposed to living work and learning what the context of work with sexual racism dangerous as our discourse of royal power with the recent public culture the country for social justice body live firm not critique of black within people race social economic political structures cut the cardinal political structure now the alternatives framing is working against world their opposite optimistic theorization living room and the basis of warfare to access liberation to Wilson through the study of blacks because such as the construction of society black there's also the blacks that pertain to social society black suffering is not a function or forms of society black systems society coalitions those movements are both by affirming and black this case over. Vote economic representation, vote at full and the one to see harms there's indeed a sexual problems inside your ballot after Toronto and as Toronto certainly cannot mobilize spill over their method next voting after double time because the debate is if the kind of structure of the world kind of reinforced by use of the site of the room with this black woman that's saying the black to give them about to strengthen them holds parts of neoliberal academics after that solve they isolate one issue in the world but world will move to other AI other weaponry other structures to procreate the black to show the voting affirmative will not stop on the roll balance of also engage because I would have to say these sitting whiteness or black girl magic bad ways is involved to put a black person position to the moose black engagement also fight when a race of voting negative align with this sitting whiteness says alms in a frame because otherwise there's no way for you to have alms under it next to these sitting whiteness goes far enough because of the city's power the non now like now Western doesn't mobile effect so we can actually inject the blacks on the method they contaminate with non-potential perspectives you want to invite the fans to the living room turn case because you re-exasperate the black side non-black people are framing which prevents survival reproduce exhaustion because it allows everybody to come into the living room it is falling and it is falling and kind of fragments fragments black communities fragmentation turns CX proves that the living room is not made or made for anyone in the black community that is not identified as black woman you said it's problematic for black women to be and participate in the living room shows you fragment black communities which turns case because it creates specific violence to black women through black women which resolves to the communal resistance not counter method 1 point harm and flows negative the one to see evidence proof the African analysis in the standpoint of harm and 2 point vote negative condones critical fabulation right there and look our the ways that black communication first black elections resist a little bit legislative whiteness to reimagining history harmony has to tell possible stories by putting the archive by telling possible story and finding possibility of selling intention to pain of actual life captives standing against limbs archive away culture history and this is a critical fabulation of Byron chain elements sort of imagine what might have how I might have that comes from narrative or fashion present the future every time the story and narrative plus never the present now AI can be used effectively confronting human technological bias causing fairness McKittrick I think AI is a tool for remove bias AI can be employed to identify reduce effect of human bias to find recognize bias AI can reduce the caused by human bias and improve fairness by serving long-standing bias that may have gone unnoticed AI will be better cut to violation of unfair bias can engage communities like likely to my bias skip the Lewis card go down to the method pitch voting for the one seat or economic privilege respectively politics of black girl magic burn up 16 the mother carefree black girl have body privilege protection and access to easier being carefree when you have the resources and access to live in community where the altar against you it wasn't priority where world is much cruel placing the justice will mutually being a carefree black girl you can expect that any conversation about the whole black community can move toward that these names will come up as respectable politics how everyone have the idea of being carefree but until we break down the systemic classes this is homophobic and race that deals with every style black girl from truly being through how will we make it can be carefree without the protection that those who have not any privilege use next is responding to historical racial recuperation melancholic to our historians that reproduce politics of representation sovereignty which is impacted on one with impacted to one to see harm and evidence especially 18 habits of frame injury is ontologically comes into conflict with the need to give investment attachment to serving in the compel historicism that views slavery as a side of entry to our minds the idea that claims to see history and go back and look for the entry to recover the subject this holds the social historical section by present part of the suffering and not sure myself I must necessarily believe that I was not one else and not the person I was going to be known as social recovery pace and to repair the melancholic obsession with racist and the model representation of personal expression and after the sovereignty melancholic by engineers illusion acknowledgement of sovereignty negation celebrates capacity for mastery locating where it was not the issues lost has precipitated melancholic will not hear protest and externally distributed historical racial by ignoring the ways in which in a foster experience outside of the afterlife of slavery shoes okay 14 that the aspects no longer assume as shared experience given the difference between African American immigrants and Black Americans and notion that racism and started catalyzing burden is no longer for granted immigrants do not experience racism the same way or share identity they experience the same way in the black social world blacks is an American formulation imperialism and exploitation get it the way no more blacks have a right to American than a certain slave a new African or necessary corrective to black Atlantic African slavery defined the limit experience of priorities are African Americans cut the card African Americans not criticism gender fail to realize the way patriarchy does and subjugation death of raceless males within society curry 20 black men was suffer specific gender bias fallen states is gender patriarchy situated elimination extermination raceless male goods patriarchal society have imposed target raceless false patriarchy that's when oppressing goods or raceless males who fall outside against your bonds dominant racial goods or patriarchy that's the false that's separate raceless males from society everything other curry I didn't read and if you need clarification for where I cut cards or marked I can also do that
Yeah, Mark Doc would be nice.
all right. That should be sent.
Give me a second to get it. All right, I just got the email. Let me download it. All right, you good?
Yes.
Cool. The Curry evidence, when a Black woman reads enough about how Black women experience unique forms of misogyny, why do we have to also talk about how Black men get killed by the cops?
The argument is this is not an oppression Olympic debate. At least I'm not going to make it that. The argument is the way in which gendered violence happens. It's something that like racialized violence to males hasn't, I guess, participates in the violence that you talk about.
The biggest group that's killed by police is Black trans women. So why are you centering it on Black men?
I'm not centering it on Black men. The argument is that the kind of coherence in ways that gendered violence happens in society happens like through subjugation of certain individuals of racialized groups. I.e., this analysis of this lets us have a better articulation and understanding of the way that
Sure.
gender
So how does
hierarchies happen and fall
what is
against
the
Black
alternative
people.
explanation that the card gives? How does it negate the F? Like,
The
what is the
alternative?
implication of this card?
The alternative or the
What is
Curry
the
card?
implication of the card?
Oh, I'm asking which card? The Curry card?
The Curry card, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Our argument is that the critique of the way that gender hierarchy and like violence happens within a world absent an understanding of the way that patriarchy thrives and gets coherence through the subjugation of certain groups within racialized groups would turn the case because it proves that focusing on individualized.
The Berman 16 evidence, what methods how is the act like respectability politics?
Well, sure. The argument is that through the affirmative method of like the living room, one is that we have to confront and understand the overarching.
Like the words of this card is
yeah. Do you want me to answer questions?
No, I have
unable...
a different.
Okay, if you don't want me to answer questions.
The warrant of the card is Beyonce, Willow Smith, etc. The gums evidence is specific to like Black people within the hood and Black women in the hood trying to survive being like subjugated by capitalist structures. Like, why is like the Black Bourgeoisie or why is like rich Black women the same thing as the like 1AC?
If I win an argument that the affirmative is unable to confront or combat the totality of anti-Blackness through their methodology, that means that the, I guess, carefree nature of Black girl magic is not accessible to everybody.
Sure. Let's see. This AI stuff. How does AI combat like human or how does AI combat unfairness?
Yeah, sure. It can be programmed. It can be programmed, developed to analyze and orient itself against the ways in which humans carry out bias. We say that humans are worse than AI because humans are something that, per an anti-Black world, would not be able to detach themselves from that anti-Blackness. But AI can be redeveloped or just made in new ways.
So
just because LAWs are bad doesn't mean all AI is bad.
The argument is that AI can be redeveloped.
Well, our argument is that AI is a tool that can confront and combat human biases.
Okay. The T-flow. Hold on, let me go back up there. My thing just skipped. The impact turn stuff. Why aren't you willing to engage in the 1AC?
I mean, what do you mean?
It's the warrant for the reason why I don't get impact turns is because you weren't able to engage. So why weren't you able to engage?
I didn't know what the alpha was. Plus, it wasn't defining the topic until like
I'll
less
take
than 20 minutes for the round.
Case, overview on case, then the like 1 and C overview and their cards top down, key, critique. The doc, and you do not get another sheet for the overview.
Is there a doc, Leah?
No.
All right, can I get that order one more time?
Yeah. Case, an extension of case, then the 1 and C top down with their overview on top, key, okay.
I'm good.
Very good. Oh wait, let me record the speech just in case I cut out. All right, dope. Extend case debates about legal autonomous women, limit the black feminists theorizing about them, laws are structural aggravated about the kills black men through AIs for denial, medical care, predictive policing, which is Hampton evidence impacted spirit murder, which current all their activism office because it proves that black women are not strong enough to continue. Vote asked to make the debate a living room where justice gives ability for black women to self-care, which enables new forms of healing. Go to the framings of it. Send the role of battle, choose to reject any forms of spirit murdering. This is the best substantial mechanism to allow for black women to sustain themselves within the debate space. Going to the line here. 1 point, they say that black women can sustain liberalism, but no, the living room rejects neoliberalism and anti-black institutions. 2, you say other structures, but the living room helps sustain black people through those other structures, will allow them to survive. 3, you say that it moves to black engagement, but no, allows for black female engagement to be possible. You say not all people will affirm, but we aren't, as educators, they resist. They have a duty to protect black women's psyche from getting sustained exploited spirit murdering. 5, you say fragmenting, but this is victim blaming. Obviously, we're not fragmenting, we're just isolating black women. Also, the reason that's why misogyny war happens, but you still prioritize the ways in which black women are impacted by it. You say Hartman flows neck, but no, Hartman is not an no, Hartman is a not flow. I can actually agree with the fact that organizing should happen within black women in the living room. That's the William evidence. So the Hartman evidence says those efforts, it creates these living rooms that allow for black women to organize within each other to sustain themselves, which is what they fundamentally disagree on. The Broom 16 evidence, we're not specifically that organization of rich white black men, but black women. Rather, we're an organization that allows for people in the lower class to organize with each other to create room for ourselves. And the best evidence one is our argument that organization needs healing, which has been taken away from them. All these shots and seen evidence. 1 point is that black feminism recognizes these possibilities and lets social organizing happen. The Corey evidence is black trans women have the highest level of rates of killing, which means that we are the center and intersection between patriarchy and racism. On the March 19 evidence one is the app. This is really reductionist. The app obviously thinks that AI can possibly reform through 1AC movements, but we're saying that right now it's utilized in a terrible way in which black women are killed in the hands of medical algorithms which they have not responded to. Go to a T. Counter-interpretation, loss begin with spirit murder. That's the Hampton evidence. Our evidence mostly says that black women's perspective on AI is excluded and impacts all of their definitions because they're formulated without the input of black women. Our model makes a living group to theorize what laws are about and stakes it for us the stake between life and death. We're going to lie on here. Only interpretation proper. Any true testing argument go away. Black women's voices have been suppressed about AI development, which makes it under research. Means that rejecting it out of this space, makes it uniquely worse on the definition stuff. We meet their definition. Our definition of legal systems 8 point is off the loop, which also arguments that B point targets black women without direct interactions like predictive policing or centers white knowledge of AI, which they have responded to on the productive agency productive agency 1 point. And then not respond to the link turn here, which is that black women don't have the energy to constantly be protected, which is why they need a break on the limit stuff. 1 point is that black women destroy debate. 2 point of black women debates for something you should listen to them. That is the woman evidence. 3 point is constantly turning to inclusion because black women are being pushed out of the activity on part of the round. 1 point is flipping out. So we're just flipping up to just talk about black women not negating our identity. 2 point we're making our arguments that have black men also create misogyny, which is caused by the victim blaming on the TV. It's not specific to our app and doesn't solve our spiritual often see real world impact. It's turns here. Black women cannot endure, which means that the argument flows negative. On top of these definitions of AI, which made that argument about for black feminists is predictable and defines illegal autonomous weapons, redefines legal autonomous weapons. We do still have some ground to clash, and our app sells back black communities live through a living room, which answers the clash internally to the clash evidence. 4 point we create a stasis from a different definition. We get cross applications. Listen to black women. Talk about the argument for the true sexy argument. There's no warrant, or we don't get to weigh case, but we should. Black women are silenced, which means that we should prioritize them on the fairness of points. We should have valid proximity, but it's not just being possibly close to the battle, but rather actually they should, as educators, affirm the anti-blackness and misogyny or the black people's parents. Go to the critique. Overview on the critique permutation of both. We not broadly disagree with their thesis concerning the invasion afterlife or afterlife of slavery. The vast majority of the debate is not often. If when the after is not compatible, if when the after is not compatible with the alternative, we still have impact terms of their form of organizing. On the sharp evidence, 1 point, this is the AF argument. The Hartman evidence proves that the afterlife of black women kills black women in political action, gets energy off of black women, just turns the argument on the Merlot evidence. Black women need self-affirmation. Anything else kills them. It's not just self-affirmation, but calling out a debate for murdering our spirits and allowing to sustain each other on the clay evidence. We resist neoliberalism for the Wilmot's evidence. This is an AF argument that proves why white supremacy subjugates. 4 point, it's not included, but it's grouped as needed. They have misunderstood the gap. It's not pessimism, it's optimism, which is compatible with the alternative, which is to try to create more social movements. Permutation do both. The gap is optimistic formations, which creates living spaces to help them retain. And two, civil society can change through social movements, which most of them started by Black women to begin with. Look at things like Black Lives Matter, as well as capitalist organizing movements, anti-capitalist organized movements that are happening by Black women, proves that these social changes cannot change, which as long as we allow for Black women to create the energy to have them, which justifies the permutation. Justifies permutation.
Leah, what were the responses to the like top level presumption stuff?
Repeat your question.
The first point in the overview of presumption stuff. What were your responses?
Yeah, so it says we don't vote negative presumption as we isolate debate itself as a spate of spirit murdering, which kind of like gives us unique questions for the 1AC, i.e. the 1AC allows for a living room within the debate space. So we don't need to like necessarily change all structures. We just need to sustain ourselves within this debate space to give us energy and create some sort of a living room. Then there was like a line by line to like all the reasons why presumption was neg.
What are those?
Sure. So it says that like other structures, one point is that the app solves back for this because the living room creates the spaces for them to sustain themselves with those other structures. Two is that the one about like neoliberalism, the app rejects neoliberalism. That's the Wilmot evidence. Three is that it moves Black engagement. We say we don't. We actually make it possible for Black women to engage since they're tired. Four is a non-Black people vote on it. We cosplay the educators often. 5 point, you say that you like fragment Black communities, but like that's not the argument. That just like blames Black women for calling out misogynoir in the part that Black men have to play in it. The second argument is that it's not fragmenting Black community, but giving energy to the people that sustain the Black community to begin with, which is Black women.
The answers to the like shoot evidence under best. What were they?
Sorry, you cut out for me. Repeat that.
The shoot evidence under best. What was the responses?
Hold on, I need to go back to one. What was the like card?
Shoot Soke 14.
Oh yeah. It says that the app resolves this because Black feminism recognizes that there's social life outside of things like the erasure of outside of slavery, and specifically says that like Black women have experienced historical erasure, which is the Hartman evidence. Is that all you needed?
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Orders TK case.
Is there like a place where you're starting on case or?
Framework. Or yeah, your framework.
Okay.
Are any judges not ready?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that order one more time?
Starting on T, then the critique, then the case.
Is there an overview on any page? Does it require a new sheet? Are there new cards?
Nah, I don't think there is to any of those. All right. Randall, you good?
Yep.
All right. Starting with topicality, impact turns are not like there's reason to drop me. Your independent voters say, which means that there's no reason to independent drop me. It could just kind of voting on impact turns on T1. I'm not going for T1, kind of drown out the resistance strategy of finding the best way to descend the watch. That's not how you should vote for it. Even then, there's not anything flagged in the 1AR why this should come first before everything else. So don't vote for that. On a critique, I'll concede perms or test the competition. You did not ask for the status of the critique was dispositional. If you prove that the criticism, the links or the alternative were anti-black, I don't have to go for them, which means that I'll concede perm test the competition, which means that they're compatible, and I won't go for that case. Framing, your ballot should decenter whiteness, but the 2AR is extremely light on what does voting app do? Why does the app uniquely need the ballot? Why does decenting whiteness uniquely need the ballot within this round? That is not kind of answered uniquely. Now, do the work with here first is that you vote negative on results. They extended roll ballot, but extended a different roll of ballot than what was in the 1AC. You should be very skeptical of this. The roll ballot extended the 1AR was kind of rejecting shadow murder, but the one roll ballot in the 1AC is this kind of dispute murder, shows the ways that there is no kind of coherent role of the ballot. What is the ballot supposed to do? The fact that the ballot can just shift, that there's not a specific role of what the ballot should do in this round, show that there's not actually something, a necessity of why the affirmative needs a ballot, which should supercharge presumption claims. Also, there's reason that they cannot leverage the role of the ballot to exclude by office, because there just isn't a role about to go for. Next is that you vote negative on presumption, because voting affirmative will not solve the 1AC arms, both on the structural level, on the material level, and on the debate level. Voting affirmative in this round, the TOC semifinals, is not going to resolve this. It's not going to make a debate more durable. It's not going to stop all gender violence within the structure or stop it within the debate. It shows why the ballot is not able to resolve it. Rather, it's net worse, because it leads to cruel optimism that the ballot would do something. It allows non-people to attach themselves to our strategies, contaminate it, feel good about it, which turns case because you lead to re-exacerbate exhaustion, because instead of resolving violence, non-black people become like non-black judges can contaminate our movement and prevent it from getting off the ground. Next is that the app that's not solving isolates kind of one issue, the structure of AI, but the world can just move to other forms of weaponry, other forms of structure to procreate the black to show us how voting affirmative on descending whiteness and kind of rejecting black spirit murder through the debate. It just doesn't solve, because spirit murder can relocate itself. Instead of being in the debate, it gets relocated to something else. Instead of an AI gets relocated to something else, shows the way the affirmative is kind of a cyclical form of problems that does not actually combat a solution. Why is the ballot key to affirm spirit murder? How does voting out make debate more survivable? These are not clear in 1AR to hold the line in the 2AR, because there's not clear how the ballot will make debate more survivable or endurable. The role of the ballot, if I want to risk that voting negative is a form of descending whiteness, that is offense in the frame, because otherwise there's no way for me to have offense methodology. Their argument on the fragmentation turn is no, we're not fragmentation. We just isolate one group of black people, which is definitionally fragmentation. The 1AC, CX, and the 1AR are very clear. Anyone that's not black woman is not supposed to be in the living room, which kind of turns case. This is not an oppression living space, but the fact that you kind of anything that's not black woman, you just throw it off and brush it off, turns case, because it prevents communal tactics, keeping organizing instead of confronting the structures of debate and constructions of the world that are anti-black. We make it about specific individual approaches that prevent that would allow communal anti-blacks, anti-blacks within our own community to be to go ignore. Two is that it allows the debate structures instead of criticizing the debate structures, so be focused on criticizing black people, which turns case. It also shows ways so the affirmative kind of prevents healing and recreates exhaustion, because it's exhaustion. You can see that black males will participate in this form of gendered violence if they're unable to access the living room, which shows the way the exclusive practice of the fragmentation and recreation of violence. Turns case is arguing which is children because the best 18 evidence. The app views blackness to violence and serving. That's the harm of evidence. The ontological view of blackness produces an attachment and serving. They view slavery as a site of trauma, which creates a concept that we must base resistance in the historical past, and we must go back and analyze to talk about the injury of slavery or historical events. This turns case because they have a melancholic type of obsession with trauma that passes produces a rage of violence. Their narratives of violence of black women, black trans women, and every single speech shows its attachment to trauma that they have produces a rage of voices, produces a race of voices, produces the ratio of representation and experiences, because it celebrates social life by locating where blackness lacks agency, which turns the case because it proves your argument of how black people feel black women can have social life just does not solve the social life argument. You say that your organizing needs healing, but no, this argument proves that you prevent healing, because the location of slavery in the middle passage and trauma as a starting point of locating where blackness lacks this kind of social life is something that prevents this form of healing. And also reads the true TOC 14 evidence. The absolute method is the monetizing and assumes the location experiences of all black women is static and the same. This erases the unique experiences of groups within the black group, i.e. African immigrants who are black women, or African immigrants who are black women, or black trans women, which shows the way they erase the unique experiences of of the black community, which is something maybe similar, but it is not the same. The method reproduces the logical whiteness by viewing it homogenous blackness along singular static line. There's a new diaspora understanding being made. A new generations of black folks who weren't descendants of slaves. Our method of interrogating and reductions are the method of interrogating different to change the corrected that is necessary to their totalizing reductionist theory power. The method also causes communal fragmentation, which once again turns the case because it results in different groups of black folks contesting and undermining unique experience of the counterparts, which just exacerbates people in the black community undermining gender bonds, which shows how it's counterproductive. Your argument is how black people can have social life, but no, we answer that work above and how you locate the lack of social life, which prevents this from happening. Which prevents us from hacking the Burnham evidence. The card is talking about the way that Beyonce, Will Smith, etc. are the best women, are the black women who are accepted, whereas the ones who embrace the sexuality and are allowed or instead are combated because then as a result the app does respectability politics because it is not accepting of the states of black women. Sure, you're affirmative. Sure, you may say that this is not us, this is kind of whiteness, but no, it's about the way that the affirmative methodology of black girl magic assumes a form of care, freedom, and kind of respectability for people to access and be recognized by non-black people. Remember who is judging too. After judges on this panel are non-black people, which means that the affirmation of the methodology has to be kind of confirmed and respected by themselves. Show this form of respectability politics, which they have to sign off on who and what kind of black girl magic and methodologies are good enough to resist oppression, which turns the case and the voting negative solves become a confrontation and destruction of the structure resisting black care and freedom, prevents this delineation. The delineation, the framing argument for this debate is they're going to go for their kind of exhaustion, their impact calculus, and their framing to kind of delink from the affirmative, but we're isolated one. There's a floating framework. I literally different well about show that there is not a framework that synthesizes what does your ballot do and why is it key. Two is that we've isolated numerous reasons why voting negative arguments turns case because they kind of re-exacerbate exhaustion and prevent forms of healing to do communal fragmentation, which makes the affirmative impossible.
Okay, I'll take part.
How much do you have?
1 minute. Case. It'll be an overview, and then the like 2 and R's responses top down. And you don't need like a new sheet for the overview. Let me record this.
Whoa, hey, what's going on? Nobody start. Don't leave out me. Hold on, that's not good. That would be awful. Y'all know how much the University of Kentucky already love me. Don't make them love me more. Thanks. What just happened?
I said that the order is case. It'll be the overview, and then the 2 and R.
You were getting ready to whole start without me, Leah.
My apologies, Randall.
No, yes, it would have been a sad day. It would have been a sad day. What happened? That was traumatic. What's the order? Lord, right, Jesus. What?
Case is the overview, then the 2 and R top down.
Oh. Ooh. Jesus.
All right. Is everyone good? Randall, you set?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
All right. Dope. Vote app to make debate a living room. Gov says against black women the ability for self-care with labels new form of healing community building because it reframes our relations to AI drugs a new form of revolutionary activism. They ignore the ways in which black women's labors and voices have been silenced. You extend the role about which is the de-centered whiteness. Let me go my black girl magic. Don't lie on us now. We have a clear rule about that allows us to have a framing mechanism of ways in which a spirit murdering leads to anti-blackness and hurts our cycle and psychic and mental. We have no external offense, because insofar as we do enough and lie by line answers and weighing in the 2 area that means you vote app. If you're wondering what voting app does, it affirms a method where we create a living room and resist misogyny in debate. 1 point, it's not cruel optimism because the effort's not just feeling good, but actively organizing within debate to allow for Black women to sustain themselves. We'll just see gums evidence. Read it after round. It's super good. 2 point. On the they say they'll move to other structures, but 8 point. Even if they move to other structures, they ignore that the act literally resolves this issue. It says that the living room is somewhere, a place where Black women can turn to whenever other structures continue to make them feel like shit, which is the argument that we're making to begin with. They say not all people shouldn't be in the living room, but that's not the argument that we made. We didn't say not all people should be in the living room, rather that not all people can affirm that a living room is a good idea and that they should do the 1AC method, which is our argument. They say fragmentation, but they conceded the argument that Black women also perpetuate misogyny, which means that fragmentation is necessary, and the fact that the oppressed can also be oppressors. 5 point, you say that Black women contributed to gender violence, but this is literally victim blaming. Obviously, if you create a living room and Black women and Black men continue to create misogyny outside of the living room, that is not something that the 1AC has to resolve. It just has to create something to allow for Black women to turn to when this happens. 6 point, we're gonna go on the argument evidence now. 1 point, the idea that slavery is the afterlife, the idea that slavery has created an afterlife is the argument. It realizes that Black women lack agency. In fact, read the 1AC specifically says that there's no autobiographical narrative of a Black woman within the archive. Proves that the Harvard evidence says that the slave ship was an abyss and the Black women are assaulted, which is our argument. It's just that there are evidence ignores the ways in which they are the intersection of both sexual violence and racial violence, was the argument that we were making. 7 point, the absolutely solves back for African Black women because when they come to the United States or any other place, for example, non-Black people just see them as Black women, which means that they can turn Blacks to the living rooms, have us to organize. Some of the best organizing has been done for African coalition movements with Black women. Choose that it's the 1AC method. 8 point is the weighing the communal fragmentation argument ignores how Black women literally cannot survive when they sustain the Black community, but cannot catch a break when they ask for it, which is why we're asking you to listen to Black women. 9 point, read the evidence about the Black girl movement. It's literally about Willow Smith and Beyonce, not gums. There's a huge distinction between the two of them. And 2 point is the impact is not our method, but rather organizing within places like the hood to allow for Black women to sustain themselves. Arguments of which, for example, whenever Black kids get murdered or Black men get murdered, the community turns to Black women to bring them within their homes, so the living room makes possible. 10 point, we isolate that educators have no idea how bad spirit murder is, but they need to prevent exhaustion by affirming an advocacy in which Black women can exist without having to die. 11 point, your ballot affirms the method where we center Black women's discussion, which is a good norm, and we should generate a space in which we create psychological healing. Look, the framing question is that a lot of the 1, 2, and R ignores and misunderstands what the 1AC is. Insofar as we've done enough line-by-line analysis of the 2 and R, then you should vote as the act as a good method to allow for Black women to sustain self. The eternal impact of psychic violence and literal death of Black women, which should not be ignored and explored in spaces like debate. Good debate time.
Oh, good debate. Good debate.
It seems like we are in.
I'm here.
Randall, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Fantastic. Just want to say fantastic debate to the both of you. This was this was probably the longest time I took to make a decision this year. So just hope that sort of like encapsulates how close this round was and how fantastic this round was. Zion and Ari have heard this speech before, back in doubles, but congratulations to both of you for making it so far to the TOC. I sincerely appreciate the effort y'all have put in, and it's amazing the work, the blood, the sweat, the tears that you have put into debate. It's absolutely fantastic, especially during the Zoom era. So yeah, be proud of yourselves. Y'all have done fantastic, and the fact that y'all still have another year and y'all are both in semis of the TOC is absolutely fantastic. Be proud of yourselves, no matter the outcome, what the outcome of this debate was or is. So with that, let's get to the debate. This was extremely close, but the decision ended up being a 2-1 for the negative from Strake Jesuit. I sat, so let me go first. I vote affirmative because I think that the living room is a place in which Black women can build coalitions across the Black community to engage, plan, and carry out liberation and endurance strategies to confront anti-Blackness. I think that the debate itself was executed phenomenally. However, I think that there are a few problems with the 2NR. First, I'm going to go to this sort of Hartman debate. I don't really know what the link / the implication of this Hartman evidence is read in the 1NC, nor do I really understand the argument that's being made here. To my understanding, the 2NR makes this argument about how Hartman sort of proves that is sort of pessimistic, which sort of like disproves and turns the entirety of the affirmative. But I think that the 2NR / 1NC could be sort of better off to pull lines from the Hartman 16 evidence, because to me it just seems to be like an assertion without a warrant. I read through the Hartman evidence. I don't really see what the 1NC and the 2NR are sort of talking about here. That may be because I may be just not reading the evidence right, or because I just don't think that the 2NR is doing enough extrapolation here to sort of get me to the point where I think that this Hartman turn is sort of like a link. I think that the 1AC Hartman evidence just sort of describes the way in which the hold sort of created a new form of social life of flesh, which remained in opposition to the world and codifies Black women's labor, which doesn't really seem to negate the idea of the F on face value. That could be different, but that's just how I interpreted it. This was at least how I understood the 2NR's extrapolation of this argument. So I don't really understand the implication or the link to this. So then I kind of have to go to the method proper. And I think that the 2AR and the 1AR here are kind of right, because the Gum's evidence is really good, strangely, especially since it's from a Huffington Post article. I think that it says that focusing on the living room as a space for Black women to sort of seek shelter in not only helps create spaces that provide endurance from the anti-Black world, that sort of focuses on the labor and instills the labor of Black women, but it also serves a place to sort of create coalitional movements with other Black individuals to help formulate and engage in endurance and liberation strategies. To me, I think that this resolves a lot of the 2NR's offense, insofar as this Chute evidence, the Barnum evidence, all seem to be predicated on this idea of homogenization and economic privilege, which I think that the Gum's evidence sort of resolves entirely, since it's not solely a question of Black women that have been that are descended from slaves, but rather the Black community as a whole, including the diasporas, which I think means that it sort of resolves the Chute evidence. To me, I think that this sort of becomes a question of not whether or not the 1AC produces fragmentation that creates exhaustion, but rather it's a question of whether or not that fragmentation allows Black women to sort of separate and create those spaces in order to spill up and help the Black community altogether. Third is the shoot evidence proper. I think that the 2NR here, this also goes with the Barnum evidence as well, sort of like needs to extrapolate a link to the affirmative a lot more, because I think that the 2NR, the extent to which I get the link to both of these arguments in the 2NR is just like the affirmative erases experiences or unique experiences by Black immigrants, which shows like that their method is like homogenizing. Then for the Barnum evidence, or the Burnham evidence, sorry, not the Barnum evidence, that the affirmative is respectability politics because it embraces like Black girl magic, which is like sort of an idea created like Beyonce and whatnot. However, the internal link to both of these seems to be like created from a notion of like the 1AC sort of acts as a notion of privilege. However, I think that the 1AC sort of like, once again going back to the gums evidence, sort of describes that the 1AC's method is not really a question of like privilege, but I think that the gums evidence sort of contextualizes that the living room is a method found in like places like the Black communities in Harlem, which obviously aren't going to be as much as like going to experience like much notions of privilege because of like notions of like policing and whatnot, which to me I think sort of takes out a lot of this offense. So if I think that the 2AR provides if I think that the 2AR is winning a pretty good answer here, that the 1AC provides a space to engage for everyone, it's not then a question of slavery, but rather how the original event created a superstructure that continues to dominate Black individuals, even if they did come as immigrants, which I think that the 1AC sort of solves through this like coalitions offense. Yeah, and I think that it's sort of like the same story here for the Burnham evidence. Overall, I think that the 2ANR would probably be best served extrapolating the link debate to these pieces of evidence more. I do think that case was the right 2NR here, because I think that the 1AR seemed to be a bit short on this, but I think that the arguments made in the 1AR sort of like just resolved a lot of the offense the 2NR sort of contextualizes, which would be better served off being a bit, would be better served off answered more / not going for as many pieces of evidence.
Yeah, I'll go next. I just saw everything radically different from that. By the end of the debate, not certain. The app sort of concedes that they don't have really any external offense whatsoever. I also think that there's a risk of there's two things. I think they've conceded that their methodology, doesn't necessarily need the ballot. We're not really sure what the ballot does in this particular instance and why that's a thing. There's a few disads. Number one, I think they have proven that they have a method that may be exclusionary to other parts of the Black community, which then ruptures the necessity for the quote living room. Also, I think there's a risk that this methodology is probably also maybe be carrying on certain kind of other baggage that only comes along with certain classes of Black women. I think that probably needs to be argued. I think there's a few other things that I could talk about. I don't really know. By the end of the 2AR, what the survivability method of the AF is, why that's true. I have no idea what voting AF necessarily leads to in terms of its ability to decenter whiteness. Not really sure what that means even by the end of the 2AR. And I think that there's a risk that maybe Black women's self-care or the capacity to do those things are probably good, but I'm not really sure how the AF sort of resolved any of those things. And I think there's at least a residual reality of maybe that the exhaustion aspect of the 1AC probably can't be resolved by the 1AC either. I'm not really sure how the AF proves any of that at any point in the debate. And that's kind of my decision.
I'm just going to read what I had written because I wrote out a fair bit, but I do not disagree with anything that Chris just said. So this was a fantastic debate. I'm very honored to have had the opportunity to judge it. Thank you for putting me in the back. This round was very close to me, but I end up voting negative on the case turns and the presumption push. I think that the neg makes most of the right moves in this 2NR and has clear judge direction on how I should evaluate arguments in relation to one another that the affirmative is lacking. I think that at the end of the day, the burden of the neg is to prove that they either A, decenter whiteness in a better way than the affirmative, and or B, prove that the AF does not do so. So here are the things that lead me to that conclusion. Number one is presumption. The neg is extending throughout the debate that the AF cannot resolve anti-blackness or misogynoir on a structural, interpersonal, or debate level. I think that for the AF to prove that they solve those things, I will need a little more on what the AF does to like retool AI away from racist algorithms. Because as of the 2AR, the solvency push is just about the living room. It is about AF creates a space for Black women to rest, which means when civil society shifts to other ways of being anti-Black, then you can endure it. The problem with this extrapolation is I don't know why that's much of a shift from the status quo. And again, I think that the negative is just pointing out that there is a large discrepancy between the scope of the AF's harms and the scope of AF's solvency by the end of the debate. I obviously didn't vote on this alone because I think it would be unfair to say that the AF has no offense or no solvency whatsoever. But I think this push, coupled with the fact that the role of the ballot changes throughout the debate, proves to me that I should be skeptical of the affirmative's concrete ability to solve their harms. I do look at the gums evidence because you've told me to, and it seems to indicate that living rooms can be mobilized as sites of reprieve in an anti-Black world. I don't think that really answers the qualms that I'm having, that the neg throughout the debate, starting in 1AC cross-ex, tells me I need to be aware of presumption, the role of the negative, what it means to negate this affirmative, etc. The second is the Atlantic centrism dissad. I think that the neg has two pieces of very good evidence that turn the case, and the 1AR just like basically drops them. The best evidence is a critique of the afterlife of slavery thesis, which obviously links to the pessimism argument, which is why I get that the 1AR was like, well, we say afterlife of slavery is a good metric. That was why we don't link to the critique. But that didn't answer the core of the actual argument, which is that this framing creates a wounded attachment to a subject that can supposedly be recuperated from the archive of slavery, and that trying to recuperate that subject means we cannot theorize Black agency outside of slavery. This is doubled down on in the 1AR and the 2AR when the AF says that Black women's positionality is unique because, quote, there is no autobiographical account of Black women in the archive of slavery, end quote, which is sort of the next point, that the attempt to materialize that subject formation means that we cannot theorize Black agency outside of the afterlives of slavery. This has the obvious impact of ressentiment that isn't contested by the affirmative, which would turn the affirmative's ability to psychically heal, but it also creates a cap on the horizon of organizing. And I think there's an external impact of the erasure of African immigrants in Black womanhood, as per the TOC evidence, because they don't have direct ties to the captive maternal subject position that Hartman is talking about in The Belly of the World, which the AF would exclude, and means that they fracture coalitions between Black women, thus preventing communal healing. The last sort of offense sort of thing is the white judges DA. I'm not sure if this is decisively negative, but I think it does trouble my ability to vote AF on the ethos push of protect Black women's energy, because I just think there's a lot of pushback on what me doing that does for debate. For me, does it make my relationship to the AF parasitic, and what it does for the people in this round, or makes debate any different. The last things I'll say is that there was a lot of floating offense in this debate that I didn't really know how to evaluate, just mainly due to a lack of judge direction. So the Black men perpetuate misogynoir argument is in tension with later in the 2AR, where you're sometimes the oppressed can also oppress. That makes me believe that the Terns case analysis on the Atlantic centrism dissad about the exclusion of African migrant women has even more merit than just the fact that it was a drop dissad. It seems like you have lent credence to the fact that that dissad can turn the case, because Black women who occupy the position of being in the afterlife of slavery can still perpetuate anti-Blackness and misogynoir to other Black women. Another thing that was in this debate is the dissad to Carefree Black Girl, the Burnham evidence. I think it was mishandled in the 1AR, but the 2NR did not extend it very well. So I think it ended up going AF, although it wasn't unique offense, because the AF's response to it was just this isn't responsive to the AF, no link. The last thing I'll say, this Clay evidence on the pessimism critique is a round winner. It is the best piece of evidence that was read in this debate, and I don't, the negative did not extend it as a unique dissad that turns the case. It is something that problematizes and impact turns every rhetorical move that the affirmative makes in this debate as a move to resiliency politics. The endurance strategy that the affirmative is proposing, combined with the rhetorical moves to judge, protect Black women, and the quote from the 1AC, listen to Black women for once. This all marks the AF as legible, interpolable, and more broadly requires that legibility in order for it to be coherent, which is a way better way to situate these white judge interpolation bad arguments than the way that you went for them in this 2NR of just an analytic of just look where we are and who is judging this debate. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Good job, y'all.